Gia Carangi. There is everything that all young girls dream of. Beautiful, charming, young, a luxurious job that makes a lot of money, and a reputation. She appeared on the cover of famous magazines such as Cosmo and Vogue of the United States, Britain, France, and Italy, and soon became a favorite model of high-end brands such as Armani, Chanel, Christian Dior, and Yves Saint Laurent. But that's just the outside world. Her inner world, in fact, has been broken for a long time. Because if not, why did Gia Carangi give up her life when she was only 26 years old? If not, why does every time she mentions her career path, it makes many people shake their heads in regret? And if not, has she ever avoided the ultimate toxic substance that people always warn not to try? On a summer night in 1977, a photographer, Maurice Tenenbaum, happened to meet Gia Carangi, a 17-year-old girl in a club in Philadelphia, USA. Gia immediately fell in love with Maurice's blue eyes, leaving an impression on the girl's face, an ideal image with a rebellious personality. The fashion world was too bored with blue-eyed, yellow-haired models as pretty as dolls, so they needed a new, more vibrant wave, and Gia is the long leg that meets those new standards. The prediction of Maurice Tenenbaum is not wrong. In 1978, when Gia was 18 years old, after Maurice sent pictures of Gia Carangi to model management companies in New York, they immediately contacted this beauty. Gia came to New York and worked for a model company for 3 months, then quickly became one of the most popular models in the United States in the 1970s, becoming the origin of the supermodel. Gia Carangi's life changed so quickly. In just one night, from an unnamed country girl in Philadelphia, she suddenly became the queen of a strange kingdom in New York. At the end of 1978, when photographer Chris von Wangenheim, famous for his rather strange photos, he tried to switch to the topic of nude photography, all the other models refused Chris' request. But Gia has accepted it. The first picture Gia Carangi took when she first started her career was of nude standing behind a fence. And the picture has become a phenomenon and helped Gia quickly become famous. Gia is not the first model, but she is the one who defined the concept of supermodel. At the age of 17, a middle school girl, Gia Carangi, showed off her beautiful, open, 8-meter-tall, 3-round body. Not to mention, Gia Carangi did not hesitate to take pictures of violent acts. One thing that almost no model nowadays dares to do, especially when Gia Carangi was only 17, 18 years old. That irregularity made Gia a poet in the eyes of many photographers. As one of the first supermodels of the entertainment industry, Gia Carangi is a person who breaks the rules and is a famous trendsetter with a fiery personality. Since starting her career, she has disregarded prejudices with her sharp and violent attitude. Gia is not afraid to show herself both in work and in her personal life, because she is quite open about her gender and often applies the non-gender style. After those riots, Gia Carangi signed a contract with Mrs. Wilhelmina Cooper, a legend in the training world, to flirt with famous tall girls. Meet Gia. It is one of the most memorable moments of Wilhelmina Cooper, who ran a model management company in New York. She was even so happy that she forgot about signing a contract for this 18-year-old model. Wilhelmina Cooper almost became Gia's first midwife because of her help. This young model quickly rose to the top of her career, and this is extremely rare when it happens in the model business. Not for long. Another extremely important meeting has taken place. Gia met with Vogue magazine photographer Arthur Egot. This meeting led to acquaintance with other Vogue and Cosmo photographers, Francesco Scavollo, Marco Glaviano, Richard Avedon. Gia's one-year income began to grow rapidly when he reached the level of 100,000, a dreamed-up number in the 70s and 80s. And when the audience hears the full name of any character, they know who it is. With the life of Gia Carangi, just a name is enough. To have that success, beyond the beauty and shape, Gia also realizes his potential. That is, the ability to act in front of the mirror. She thinks that the models also need to express emotion and self-confidence that can change with any requirement. That's her talent. but she's also very ugly. The most prominent thing about her is her unnecessary personality. She does whatever she wants. She works according to her mood. She can go straight out of school if she feels like she doesn't want to continue working or accept to cancel the schedule for the next few weeks just because she doesn't like the new haircut. That's it. Just after a few years of standing as a model, she is at the peak of her life. The worst nightmare of Gia's life came out. Looking at Gia's bustle and bustle, many people may think that Gia is young and ignorant. But that's just what the world sees in a girl who has everything in her hands at the age of 18. Living a luxurious life is promising. No one knows that behind the glory is a lot of pain that this young star has to endure. The things that Gia Carangi, America's first supermodel, had to silently endure. 1. Being harmed by bad guys. According to a friend, in the past, Gia used to be used by a lot of people for her body, or to put it another way, for sexual harassment, but she couldn't speak up in front of bad guys. Gia's life was like a loop. In the morning, she was surrounded by dozens of cameras, becoming the center of attention. But at night, when she came home, the supermodel still had to fight the loneliness alone, facing 4 cold walls. 2. Overcoming an unfortunate childhood. On the outside, she seems carefree, but in reality, Gia is always uncomfortable with the emotional side of her parents in her childhood. Looking back at the 1960s, Gia was born and grew up in Philadelphia, USA. Her mother, Kathleen, is of Irish and Welsh descent, while her father, Joseph, is of Italian descent. Perhaps it was the mix of ethnicities that helped Gia have a clear path that attracted people's attention right from the first glance. However, the problem arose when Joseph and Kathleen had an unstable marriage and many physical interactions with each other. Life was no longer peaceful with Gia Carangi right from the moment she was a child. Her childhood was spent with her brother, sitting on the porch, listening to her parents argue, and then at age 11, Kathleen left her 2 children behind. Their divorce was a heavy blow to the future star. The girl had to deal with her mother's lack of care. This bad childhood experience may have made Gia care about women when she grew up. A close relationship with girls is gradually becoming something important in Gia's heart. In middle school, Gia started hanging out with guys who were fans of David Bowie. The boys were crazy about his style, his way of living, and even his personality. At that time, Gia wore oversized clothes and was popular when people thought he was a teenager. His friends often went to clubs for gay men. Gia started to look at himself. I always want to make a difference and make a difference. I just want to get my mom's attention. If you ask me, what does Gia Carangi need most? She will not hesitate to answer. That is a motto. A friend of mine told me that the things I do, even the job of a famous model, it's just to get my mom's attention. Gia Carangi is like a little girl running around with my mom. Do enough for the kids just to get my mom's attention, but my mom didn't care, even though it was just a look. Maybe that's why Wilhelmina Cooper, the owner of Gia's management company, played an important role in Gia's heart. Because since she joined the company, she not only became the queen of the company, but also met her manager, as well as her second mother, Wilhelmina Cooper. That's it. The time to make a decision that makes everything worse is the death of Wilhelmina. March 1980. Gia's manager is the supermodel Wilhelmina Cooper, passed away from lung cancer. The feeling comes back to Gia Carangi. A person who loves you is like that, cares about you is like that. In the end, he also left her. Michael Carangi, Gia's younger brother, retold that he rarely received the call from his sister to ask him to come to New York to live with her. A colleague also said that Gia often came to her house at 2 a.m. to look for comfort. Since childhood, she has lacked empathy until she grew up alone in the city, making Gia Carangi only know to find leisurely fun to forget loneliness. But then, it seems that in the end, there is nothing that can comfort Gia. Drug becomes an indispensable thing to her. The more she relies on it, the more she is conditioned to it. She is no longer Gia Carangi, who is good at changing emotions like any other day. Her stubbornness begins to affect her work. She sleeps tight when taking pictures. She screams when she can't find drug. She voluntarily leaves during the photo shoot just because she is not interested. She fell to the ground. Her skin was yellow. Her body was wrinkled. Her eyes were lifeless. Scavullo remembered, once we took a picture in the Caribbean, Gia kept crying because she couldn't find the heroine. In the end, I had to carry her to bed. Wait until she went to sleep. Elisa Stewart, Gia Carangi's ex-lover, criticized. The problem here is that they deliberately hide it, but it doesn't help Gia. What Elisa mentions are the people who work in the fashion world and the models. They know how to deal with the cost of drug, but they don't care. Let Gia Carangi use it as he pleases. Some editors were even willing to pay Gia Carangi a large amount of money to use drugs freely. The industry of fashion and models is no different from a beautiful apple. In a photo shoot with Vogue in the US, Gia had to spend a lot of time decorating the hearts on her hands. Of course, it's easy to understand that not many people can stand Gia anymore. Gia was completely out of use, from this low-end model company to a no-name model company, like a weakling. In the end, Gia was expelled from the world of fashion. In 1981, Gia returned to Philadelphia, where she was treated for drug addiction, but not long after, she reused it. And while she was drunk, she caused a car accident, leading to her arrest. When she was in trouble in her life, Gia tried to get by signing a contract with a famous company, Elite Models. In 1982, Gia left the company and became a freelance model. However, the path of her later life was full of difficulties when no one wanted to work with a normal, sunny, rainy model. In addition, the appearance of Cindy Crawford became a huge threat to Gia when this model was beautiful and had a style that was not inferior to her. Not to mention, Gia is still addicted to drug. Even her appearance is destroyed by drug. The use of drug frequently causes her arms to have fish-shaped acnes and bruises, and she has to hide those fish-shaped acnes by putting her hand behind to have the most beautiful picture for the photo shoot. This picture of Cosmopolita appears on the cover of a German magazine. It's the last picture she took when she was a model. At the end of 1984, once again, Gia Carangi went on a pilgrimage. 6 months later, she was hospitalized and readmitted to a more serious hospitalization. She had no money left, and there was no way back to her job as a model. No studio or fashion company accepted her. Gia was forced to live on welfare money, sleeping on the street in the cold rain. Anyone who loved her could only help her with 1 or 2 meals, but could not save her for the rest of her life. Then, in 1985, she was exposed to poisoned needles when using syringes used by homeless people. And finally, she became the first woman to be infected with AIDS. At that time, AIDS had just appeared, and because it was a strange disease, there was no suitable treatment. Gia, though infected, still wanders around to buy drugs and has to endure many hardships. In 1986, she was found on the street and hospitalized for being attacked and seriously injuring her sense organs. Gia's condition was getting worse and worse. The great pain was Gia Carangi, who only realized what she wanted when she started to breathe. Her mother, Kathleen Carangi, this is when she finally stopped caring, and being by her side till the end. 1 month before Gia Carangi passed away, she was transferred to the hospital's quarantine facility, but not everything had happened as one had hoped. On November 18, 1986, Gia had her AIDS genetic mutation and a 3-day funeral took place. Gia was buried in the coffin because the disease made her face and body look bad. Only the closest people were present at the funeral. At that time, a death related to the disease, AIDS, meant shame and humiliation. Later, to talk about the virtues of a talented but spoiled and weak model. The life of the world's first supermodel with AIDS is recreated in the movie produced by HBO called Gia. In the past, Gia once said, "Modeling is no different from a short play." She also realized that glory will not last forever. Perhaps the end of the young supermodel, the bright future, has been sadder than anything she or anyone can imagine. Gia, a beautiful, beautiful queen in the kingdom of fashion, has passed away in an unrecognizable, ugly form. However, there is only one thing that has not changed. She lived a lonely life, and in the end, she also left in solitude. Many people may be sorry for Ms. Gia Carangi's fate, but you never know. Only death can free Gia from her miserable, painful youth. And to this day, even though the yellow paper has searched and searched for Gia's whereabouts, the truth is she was the one who laid the foundation for the birth of supermodels like Cindy, Christy, Naomi, Claudia, Ella, Tatiana, Linda, and many other famous beauties.